Discover the miraculous journey of David, God's unexpected champion who fulfilled his divine plan. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the Lord spoke to Samuel, the prophet, commanding him to anoint a new king for Israel amidst an era of turmoil in the nation. King Saul, once favored by God, now wrestled with a dark spirit, and despair hung heavy over the land as the cries of the people echoed through the valleys of Judah. In Bethlehem, among the rolling green fields, shepherds tended their flocks under the watchful gaze of the Almighty. Among them was a young boy named David, the youngest son of Jesse. While his brothers were adorned in the strength of military prowess, David spent his days in quiet procession, tending to sheep, roaming the lush hills, and strumming his harp, his voice lifted in melodies of praise to the one who shepherded Israel. His heart, ablaze with faith, reflected the very essence of God's kingdom trust in the unseen one. As Samuel arrived in Bethlehem, the elders trembled in fear of divine judgment. When Samuel observed Jesse's handsome sons, he was impressed by their outward appearance. Yet, God whispered to him, "Do not look at their appearance or stature, for I have rejected them." The Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. It was David, unseen and underestimated, who was drawn forth. As the oil flowed upon his head, marking him as God's chosen, a mystery began to unfold. David, the shepherd, anointed for kingship, but peace was fleeting. The Philistines encamped against Israel, challenging the might of the Lord's people. Their giant, Goliath, loomed like a shadow, mocking the army of Israel and instilling fear with each resounding taunt. For 40 days, his voice echoed in the valleys, paralyzing the hearts of seasoned warriors. Yet, in a moment of divine orchestration, a boy with a slingshot stepped forth to meet the challenge. David approached the battle not with armor and sword, but with unwavering faith. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from this Philistine," he declared. The onlookers gaped, disbelief painted on their faces as he gathered 5 smooth stones from the brook, armed only with the confidence bestowed by God. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful stories from Scripture. Hit the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed by how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the giant charged, his roar cut through the air, yet David stood firm, a portrait of divine trust. He released the first stone, and time slowed, breath halted in anticipation of the miraculous. The stone struck true, and in that moment, the heavens rejoiced as Goliath fell defeated by the faith of one seemingly insignificant shepherd. Yet, lurking in the shadows, King Saul's jealousy began to simmer, planting seeds of persecution. David's victory would not only crown him in glory but also thrust him into trials that would test his spirit. As God's purpose unfurled, the embers of destiny glimmered in the darkness, a reminder that through weakness, God's strength is made perfect. The journey had only just begun, and with anticipation, the world awaited the next chapter of God's grand design, a tapestry woven through faith, frailty, and divine purpose. And it came to pass, as David returned from battle, the sound of praise filled the air. The women of Israel came out to meet King Saul with tambourines, rejoicing, and singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s." And when Saul heard the song, his anger kindled within him. The thought of David's rising fame struck him like a dagger in the heart. The spirit of jealousy took root, and from that day forward, Saul eyed David with suspicion. The Lord, who had chosen David, was with him, granting him success in every undertaking. David earned the favor of the people and of the king, conducting himself with wisdom and integrity. Yet unbeknownst to him, the shadows of betrayal were forming in the heart of Saul. Driven by fear and a desire to preserve his throne, he sought to destroy David. One day, as David played the harp in Saul's presence, the troubled spirit that plagued the king seized him. Without warning, Saul hurled his spear at David, aiming to kill him. But David eluded the blow, and in his heart, he remained steadfast, for he knew the Lord had anointed him for a purpose beyond the crown. David fled from the palace, the dust of despair rising beneath his hurried feet. He sought refuge in the wilderness of Ziph, a land unmarked by the comforts of home but rich in God's presence. In that desolate place, he cried out to the Lord, saying, "You are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living." Psalm 142 verse 5. His heart was burdened, yet his eyes remained lifted, for he understood that the righteous would not be forsaken. News of his whereabouts reached Saul, who mobilized his men in blind rage, determined to extinguish the life of the young champion. David, however, had allies, men who were discontent with Saul's rule, men who felt the weight of oppression, gathered around him. They were the weary and the oppressed, a motley crew bound by the hope that in David they saw a king who would lead them to freedom. As David took refuge in the strongholds of the wilderness, he continued to seek the face of God. It was in the cave of Adullam that he penned his laments and praises, learning through the trials that the Almighty was his shield and stronghold. Psalm 18 verse 2. Despite the bitter nights, he nourished the seeds of leadership that God had planted in him, yet as David's fame grew, so did the threat of the king. Saul had sworn to kill him, and the grip of despair tightened with each passing day. And in the depths of his fear, David's faith was tempered like gold in the fire. He began to realize that his destiny was not to merely slay giants nor to rule with iron, but to lead God's people with a heart that sought the Lord. Then came a day when David received word that Saul had come to the desert of Ziph in pursuit of him. In that moment, David did not harden his heart with bitterness. Instead, he prayed, seeking God's guidance. "Will Saul truly come down to me, as your servant has heard?" he implored. God answered him affirmatively, revealing both the dangers and the destiny that lay ahead, and so, the stage was set, with the shadows of betrayal on one side and the light of divine purpose on the other. The hearts of the people stirred with hope, for David was destined to become more than a warrior, he was to fulfill the promises of God to his people. Little did they know that this was but a prelude to a kingdom that was soon to be established, a kingdom not made by human hands but designed through the covenant of heaven. As the winds of divine favor began to blow, a whisper echoed in the depths of the wilderness: "The moment approaches when your faith shall be tested, and the fruits of your trials shall bring forth glory unmeasured." What awaited David in the unfolding chapters was a reminder that in the tapestry of God's plan, every thread counts, and through his faithful servant, the Lord was preparing to weave a legacy that would echo for generations yet to come. And it came to pass, as David remained in the wilderness of Ziph, that he discerned the movements of Saul and his men drawing near, intent on seeking his life. The air was thick with tension and the weight of uncertainty loomed over him and his companions. Yet David's heart was anchored in the promises of the Lord, who had previously brought him through trials. He called together his band of the disheartened, urging them to stand firm in faith, saying, "The Lord is our deliverer, and we shall not fear what man can do unto us." As night fell over the wilderness, David sought the counsel of the Lord. With a heart full of yearning, he beseeched, "O Lord, will the men of Ziph deliver me into the hand of Saul?" The answer came swiftly, stirring a holy resolve within him. "Yes, they will. Be strong and take courage, for I am with you." In awe of the divine revelation, David gathered his men, and they decided to take a bold stand. Resolute in their mission, they embarked to surprise Saul's camp, striking with the swiftness of the eagle. Through fortuitous stealth, they located Saul and his army as they lay asleep under the stars. The Spirit of the Lord filled David with a sense of divine audacity. One of his companions, Abishai, whispered to him, "Let me strike Saul down, I will not need a second blow." But David's heart was filled with mercy. He answered, "Do not destroy him, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" In that moment of keen discernment, David comprehended the depth of the covenant God had made with Saul, despite his failures. With reverent fear, he took only Saul's spear and water jar, as a sign and a reminder that vengeance belongs to the Lord. As they withdrew silently into the night, the breath of the Almighty stirred the winds, and David stood on a distant hill, holding the spear aloft. "Saul, why do you pursue me? What wrong have I done?" His voice echoed through the valley, piercing the stillness. If I am guilty, let the Lord judge me, but if it is not I, then let my life be precious in your sight. Saul awoke, and the heavy cloud of sleep lifted from his eyes. With clarity cutting through the confusion, he heard David's words and recognized the truth: the very hand he sought to destroy was marked by righteousness. "Is that your voice, my son David?" cried Saul, his voice trembling, filled with the weight of realization. "You have shown me today that you are more righteous than I." The pursuit of hatred most tangible began to crumble before the light of love and humility. David, with the heart of a true shepherd, had not only spared the life of his adversary but had also extended a hand of reconciliation illuminated by God's grace, yet the momentary relief did not erase the certainty of the storm still brewing in Saul's heart. The king turned, unsteady in his resolve, and departed, battling the demons of guilt and jealousy. And David, though the shadow of danger still loomed, rejoiced in the knowledge of the Lord's presence moving through and with him. In faith, David reflected upon the path ahead, understanding that this mercy would not go unrecognized. The pursuit of destiny was fraught with trials still, yet the faith that had carried him thus far whispered promises of hope. "There shall come a time," David spoke to his men as they stood vigil over the night, "when God shall bring forth a kingdom through me, one that shall know no end." And as they ventured deeper into the wilderness, a fresh wind stirred, carrying with it the call of a future not wholly unveiled. In the heart of the faithful awaited a truth, but what awaited David was only the beginning, for the Lord was preparing a king after his own heart in the lineage of a greater promise, one that would ultimately redeem the world. And it came to pass, after the echoes of reconciliation faded into the night, that David's spirit was stirred by a vision of the future, a vision not rooted in the transient shadows of his present troubles, but in the enduring covenant of his God. In that wilderness, where life was often harsh and the nights long, he felt a divine assurance girding his heart, whispering of purpose and destiny. As dawn illuminated the horizon, David called his men to gather round him. He spoke to them, "Brothers, the God of our fathers has not forgotten us. He has kept his hand upon me, and I shall not falter. Let us not turn from our course, for his plans are greater than our fears." In response to his fervor, his men bore witness to the Spirit of the Lord that resided in David, emboldening them to press on. They resumed their journey through the arid wilderness, navigating the rugged terrain, their hearts kindled with a renewed sense of hope, yet news of the king's pursuit lingered, as the eyes of Saul and his soldiers searched vigorously for David. It was said that Saul had taken counsel with those loyal to him, and they had incited a bitterness that fueled his wrath. As David traveled, he moved with caution, knowing that danger was never far behind. In the days that followed, David sought refuge in a stronghold of the wilderness, a place known as Anointed, where the rocks rose like mighty fortresses and the waters flowed as soothing balm to the weary soul. There he sought the Lord, crying out, "O Lord, grant me wisdom. How shall I navigate this treacherous path? How shall I fulfill the burden you have placed upon my heart?" The Lord answered him, not as a distant deity but as a nurturing father. In prayer and supplication, David was reminded of the anointing he had received from Samuel, when the oil was poured upon his head, marking him as king. "Remember, my servant," the Lord spoke to him within the silence, "for my word shall not return unto me void, and the lineage I establish shall stand firm." And while David sought communion with God, a messenger arrived, an inhabitant of Ziph, bearing troubling news. "David, there are whispers among the people that Saul seeks your life still, and he has rallied an army against you." This news pierced the hearts of David's men, trembling now with fear, yet David did not succumb to despair. Instead, he breathed deeply into the promise of the Lord's unwavering presence. "Gather your strength, for the Lord our God is with us," David proclaimed, igniting a spark of courage within his weary band. As darkness cloaked the landscape once more, David and his men prepared to meet the coming days with faith, praying and strengthening one another. "Shall we act or wait?" Abishai questioned, his eyes searching David's face for direction. David replied, "We shall trust in the Lord. His ways are not our ways, and in his timing, we shall see the victory." It was on a night thick with expectancy that the Lord's will was revealed. In a moment of divine clarity, David received a vision. He would not only survive, but through his lineage, salvation would arise for many, a promise echoing through the ages. And as he gazed upon the stars twinkling above, a profound truth settled in David's heart: the Lord has not forsaken me, nor my people. A greater king shall emerge from my line, one who will be a shepherd to the nations. Thus, the weight of destiny pressed upon David as he prepared for the trials ahead, understanding that the path of the Anointed was one paved with struggle and sacrifice. What is a little suffering for the greater glory that awaits? He mused. Behold, he concluded, the Lord has a plan beyond our comprehension, a plan that will usher in hope eternal. The promise lingered in the air, thick with anticipation, heralding that David's journey was but the beginning of a divine tapestry unfolding across time, for in the heart of his lineage lay not just a kingdom but a fulfilled covenant unto the ends of the earth. As the shadow of night was cast once more over the rugged cliffs of En-gedi, an unquiet stillness enveloped David and his men. Fear had clawed at their hearts, but faith held them firm. And then, as the flickering flames danced with shadows upon the rock, the voice of the Lord whispered once again into the depths of David's soul. Seek me in your desperation, and I shall reveal my purpose, the Lord declared, a sacred promise hanging like dew on a new dawn. Encouraged, David assembled his men, their weary faces now alight with the fire of expectancy. Tonight, we shall seek the face of our God, he said, raising his hands to heaven. For deliverance springs forth from him alone. As they bowed in prayer, the air thickened with the awareness of the divine presence. Echoes of their heartfelt supplications reverberated in the stillness, mingling with the rustle of leaves overhead. A sudden urgency stirred within David, as he rose to his feet, the light of revelation illuminating his path. Mighty warriors! He cried, his voice echoing off the stones. The time has come for action. Saul is near, but the Lord our God has given me a plan. We shall not be mere shadows hiding in these caverns. We will move as the hand of God, striking forth not with sword but with cunning. The Lord will deliver Saul into our hands. In their hearts, the men were stirred, their spirits ignited by David's bold declaration. Yet, uncertainty crept into their minds. But what if the king's army finds us? One of the younger men quibbled, anxiety lining his brow. Trust in the Lord. Abishai echoed, his faith robust. For have we not seen his deliverance time and time again? This is our moment to act. The night deepened, heavy with purpose as David outlined his strategy, leading his band to a narrow passage that would allow them to flank Saul's advancing camp. With stealth not of this world, they moved like shadows, undetected beneath the shroud of night. Meanwhile, Saul, calm and consumed by his wrath, found rest in a hollow among the hills. Unbeknownst to him, the forest whispered secrets. Stray winds carried with them the fragrance of divine intervention, as heaven itself tuned its ear to the plight of the Anointed One. As David and his men inched closer, a sense of awe filled the air. Clutching their weapons tight, they pressed forth until they stood upon the precipice overlooking the king's encampment. In the stillness, this mighty assembly fell breathless at the sight below, a sleeping Saul, vulnerable and unaware. "What now, David?" murmured one of the men, his eyes wide with both fear and excitement. "Shall we strike him down? For the Lord has placed him at your mercy." David's heart raced with the weight of the moment. Yet, as he looked upon the man who remained anointed, though fallen, conviction settled like iron in his core. "Nay, let us not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed," he commanded, a fierce light in his eyes. "For it is not our place to decide how God's plan shall unfold." As conviction swept through the ranks, David raised his voice to the heavens and declared, "May the Lord forgive us if we act out of haste. He knows the hour of deliverance, for his ways are unsearchable." In that poignant silence, a deeper understanding blossomed among them, echoing the words of prophet Samuel, "The Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Thus, a divine tension hung in the air as they awaited the unfolding of God's sovereign will. David's resolve stood unmoving, for he foresaw that this was not merely an encounter with a king, but a shaping moment for a covenant people, and as dawn began to break, illuminating the horizon, David realized the truth profound: a battle was not merely against flesh and blood, it was against powers that threatened God's divine promise. The moment has come, and yet, greater lies ahead, he whispered into the encroaching light. For even as they stood at the precipice of opportunity, the heart of the divine mystery stirred. What unseen path would God weave next through the lineage of David? As the first light of dawn crested over the hills, casting a golden hue upon the earth, a silence fell upon David and his men. The murmur of the night had given way to the soft rustling of leaves, bearing witness to their solemn vigil. Those weary souls remained poised, hearts racing as they pondered the weight of their decision. The warmth of the morning sun soothed their chilled spirits, yet an ember of determination burned fiercely within them. Suddenly, as the sun's rays spilled into the encampment, a divine clarity descended upon David. He felt a stirring within his spirit, compelling him to act in alignment with God's righteous will. "Brothers," he called softly, his voice steady and resolute, "let us approach with reverence and not as vengeful adversaries." His words hung in the air, charged with the promise of God's guidance. As they clutched their swords in faith, David instructed Abishai and Ahimelech to descend silently into the hollow where Saul lay. "Let us take but a token of the king's presence, to show him that the Lord has given him into our hands, and yet I have chosen mercy," he said, the conviction ringing true as certainty enveloped him. They descended cautiously, hearts pounding with both fear and courage, the thrill of destiny tinged with sacred anticipation. With every careful step, the shadows of the cave concealed their movements. When they reached the sleeping figure of Saul, a hush descended. David's heart pounded as he beheld the Anointed One, the King Israel had clamored for, yet whose heart had strayed from righteousness. As if to punctuate the moment, an angel of the Lord brushed close to him, granting peace that surpassed understanding. "Shall I strike him?" whispered Abishai, barely containing the urgency in his voice. "The Lord has said he would deliver your enemies, let me smite him in one blow." "No," David replied with fervor. "For who are we to raise our hands against God's chosen servant? Touch not the anointed of the Lord, for he holds the crown of glory, and a promise yet unfolds." As David stood poised over Saul, a profound silence dominated the air, reminding him of deeper truths. He could envision the covenant sealed with his ancestors. "The Lord will establish the throne of Israel through my lineage, but I shall not hasten the plan with my hand," he declared, resolute in faith. Gathering his thoughts, David leaned close, gently taking Saul's spear that lay beside him and a vessel of water, symbolic tokens of kingship. As swiftly as they arrived, David and his men retreated into the surrounding shadows, merging with the dawn's embrace, hearts filled with awe at the gravity of their act. Once distanced, David climbed a hillock overlooking the valley where Saul's camp stirred awake. Raising his voice, he cried out into the crisp morning air, "Saul, O king, why do you pursue me like a ravenous wolf? Look to your spear and your water. The Lord has delivered you into my hands, yet I chose to spare your life." The echo of his words seemed to linger long after they left his lips, reaching the heart of Saul and his soldiers. Startled, Saul awoke, shaken by the sound, recognizing David's bold challenge. "My son, David," Saul lamented, his voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and realization. "You have shown me mercy, and I have erred greatly against you." At that moment, David sensed the pivotal shift in their fates. Here stood a man tangled in pride and fearful abandon, yet the mercy shown was not in vain. "If I have wronged you," David replied, "let the Lord judge between us, for I will trust his design over my own resolution." As David turned from the scene, the sunlight glimmered upon the horizon, igniting within him a sacred anticipation for the unfolding plan of God, a destiny yet uncharted, where his heart, poised for kingship, rested in the promise of peace amidst turmoil. "Though this day has birthed mercy, I perceive the greater mission yet unspoken," he murmured. The shadows of doubt and fear lifted, whispering divine possibilities. "The Lord has not finished weaving his tapestry, I can sense a divine revelation approaching." And so, as dawn arose triumphant, David's spirit surged with hope, for the path ahead held mysteries entwined with God's sovereign purpose. What new challenges awaited him, and how would God's hand guide the destiny of his people? And it came to pass that as David stood upon the hill, the murmurs of his heart trod the sacred ground between mercy and righteous anger. The morning air, tinged with the fragrance of dew, enveloped him, and he perceived that he was not alone, for the breath of God, like a gentle wind, brushed past him, stirring his spirit with fervor. Lo and behold! David spoke loud enough to reach the ears of his men, "The Lord has given me a glimpse of our purpose. We are not merely fugitives, we are the bearers of his covenant promise. Our path is lit by the compassion we extend, even unto those who seek to do us harm." And as Saul pondered David's words, his heart was pricked, and he began to understand the weight of his transgressions. The assembly of the Israelites gathered their strength, eyes fixed upon their king as the realization settled over them like the morning dew. Their hearts wrestled between the loyalty to their king and the justice exhibited by David, their future leader. In the tension of the moment, Saul turned his eyes towards David, his face lined with sorrow. "Is this your voice, my son David? You have not only spared my life today, but you have pointed me to the God I have forsaken." His voice trembled, resonating with anguish that echoed in the hearts of those who heard it. David, hearing the lament of Saul, humbled his spirit further and approached the edge of the hill. "Truly, I bear no ill will against you, O king. I shall not lay claim to the throne by the blood of my adversary." With his words, the heavens bore witness to the truth that lay entwined in his soul, a truth that would eventually guide a nation. The men of David, welling with fervent zeal, cried out, "What shall we do, O Anointed One? Saul threatens our very existence." Yet David raised a hand for silence, resolute. "Our battle is not with man, but what darkness seeks to divide the children of God. Our mission is to come forth as instruments of peace." Suddenly the skies darkened, and a low rumble of thunder surged above the valley, a divine interruption that sent shivers through the hearts of men. The presence of the Lord wove its majesty through the atmosphere, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to the covenant unfolding. Sensing this divine call, David lifted his eyes to the heavens with expectant faith. "Lord God of Israel," he declared, "I place my trust in you, for it is you who shapes the hearts of kings and hearts of men. Let not my heart stray from seeking your will." Saul, realizing the power that emanated from David, glimpsed the divine favor that shone upon him. Fearing that the rightful path was unraveling before him, he grasped his own soul's anguish. "I have acted foolishly. You have acted with unmatched grace, yet I remain a shadow of my former self. What shall I do?" David, in the spirit of God's compassion, replied, "Return to the Lord with humility. Seek him with all your heart, and perhaps he will restore the heart of a king." At that moment, a divine spirit was unleashed, stirring the hearts of the men around them. They reminisced upon the songs of old, that their forefathers sang of God's glory and the deliverance he promised to those who would await his timing. As the atmosphere grew dense with the weight of divine purpose, David felt the stirrings of a revelation hidden within the folds of his fate. "There is a path we cannot yet see, for God's design is not confined to our understanding," he mused. "What destiny awaits beyond the horizon, where both mercy and judgment align?" With the dawn brightening behind him, David knew that this chapter was but the beginning of a greater saga, a tale where the strands of God's tapestry of redemption wove through the hearts of both the oppressed and the oppressor. What new burdens shall we bear, and what wondrous works lie ahead to reveal God's sovereign plan in a world ensnared by conflict? The promise echoes anew, "For God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts deeper than our thoughts." And it came to pass that as the morning sun cast its light upon the hills, David, humbled and yet emboldened by the moment, turned to his men. "Fear not, for the hand of the Lord is upon us. He has appointed us for a purpose beyond this day." The men, watching their leader, felt a wave of unexplainable peace wash over them, stirred by his unwavering faith. "Let us not linger here in uncertainty," David continued, "but prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. The Lord has shielded us now, let us march forward to our next encounter, trusting in his unfailing guidance." With that, they set forth, eyes fixed on the path laid before them. As they descended into the valley, David felt a heaviness in his spirit, a song of lament rose within him. O Lord, my strength, how long shall my enemy pursue me? He uttered softly to himself, echoing the distress of his heart as a shepherd navigating through dark valleys. His men remained vigilant, sensing an atmosphere charged with divine significance. Meanwhile, Saul, overwhelmed with a mix of sorrow and fear, returned to Gibeah, where he summoned his servants. "Bring me the priests of the Lord," he commanded. His heart, now wrought with introspection, yearned for answers regarding the troubling path he had taken. "What have I done?" he lamented. "The blood of my own son-in-law stains my hands." The priests gathered before the king, and Ahimelech, the high priest, stood tall. "What is your bidding, O king?" he asked, his voice steady. Saul gazed into the depths of Ahimelech's eyes, searching for a glimmer of hope. "Inquire of the Lord for me," Saul exclaimed, "for I am in dire need of guidance." The Urim and Thummim, sacred instruments of divination, were brought forth. Ahimelech invoked the name of the Almighty and sought counsel. The earth beneath trembled as the answer was delivered. "The Lord has turned his favor from Saul, his anointing rests upon David, chosen to lead his people." A shadow passed over Saul's face as he grappled with the nature of his fate. "What shall I do, Lord?" he whispered in desperation, "for I am but a man ensnared in pride." In the wilderness, David was met by a messenger. His heart raced as the young man approached, breathless. "David, it is said that Saul has turned against you across all the land. He seeks your life with relentless pursuit." The weight of these words settled upon David like a heavy stone, yet he remained steadfast. "Know this," David replied, "God's favor does not depend on the whims of man. The Lord will deliver me from every hand that threatens to harm." His men rallied around him, emboldened by his unwavering strength, their faith intensified by the enormity of the challenge ahead. Through the dense trees, David and his followers pressed on, seeking refuge amidst the wasteland of Beersheba. There, the cries of desperate souls echoed through the valley, weary from the burdens forced upon them by the shadow of the throne. David, moved with compassion, cried out to the Lord, "Great God, let me not be a cause of despair to your chosen people. Protect us from evil, let your grace shine upon us like dawn." The answers weighed heavy over the land, as the hearts of many trembled. Saul's wrath began to mount, spurred on by the dark whisperings of the world. The struggle between the anointed of the Lord and the rejected king drew near a climax, and in this divine tension, in the quiet recess of David's spirit, the whisper of revelation stirred. The fullness of time is at hand, veiled by conflict, yet promise lingers in the shadows. What miraculous unfolding lies in wait when the covenant of God meets the desperation of humankind? In their anxious hearts, the faithful awaited a revelation of the Lord's sovereign purpose, the divine plan weaving together the threads of despair and hope into a tapestry of destiny. And it came to pass that as David and his men journeyed deeper into the wilderness, seeking refuge, the weight of his burdens grew heavier. Their lips were parched, for they had searched in vain for water to quench their thirst. Under the scorching sun, David paused, gazing into the heavens. "O Lord, our God, do you not see our plight? Are we not your servants, called to stand against the tide of darkness? Provide for us, O God, that our spirits may remain steadfast." As David poured out his heart, the heavens responded with silence, yet he sensed his presence drawing near. The hearts of his men were troubled, yet they rallied close to their leader, their faith doubling in their shared struggle. In that solemn moment, while the scent of dry earth and desolate rocks enveloped them, the Spirit of the Lord whispered into David's heart. "Rise, and the sustenance you seek shall be revealed." Strengthened by a newfound courage, David turned to his men. "Let us push forth. The Lord will provide." They traversed the rugged terrain until, behold, a small oasis appeared through the haze, clear waters sparkling like gems in the sun, surrounded by tall date palms offering shade. A chorus of gratitude erupted among the weary band as they hastened to the life-giving stream. Meanwhile, in Gibeah, Saul's desperation grew as the reports of David's exploits reached his ears. He paced restlessly in his chamber, the echoes of his own thoughts tormenting him. Where is the son of Jesse? How has he escaped my grasp? I will scour the land until he is found. Then a servant approached Saul, bearing grim tidings. My lord, the town of Nob harbors priests who have aided David. They have provided him with bread and a sword. The king's wrath ignited, and he raged, Bring forth the priests. They shall answer for their treachery. Thus, Saul summoned the high priest Ahimelech and the other priests of Nob. The fear of the Lord gripped their hearts as they stood before the furious king. Why have you conspired against me? Saul bellowed. Why did you aid David, giving him bread and weapons? Ahimelech, trembling yet resolute, replied, O king, is David not your servant? He has acted faithfully in your service, and no evil is found in him. I believed he carried out your command. Then you shall die for your loyalty. Saul spat, ordering his guards, Strike down the priests of the Lord. But one, Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, escaped and fled to David, breathless and terrified. David. Saul has slain the priests of Nob. Abiathar cried, the anguish of betrayal pooling in his eyes. David's heart sank as he heard the news. I have caused the death of the priests, for I was the reason Saul sought them, he lamented. But come, for we shall not stand alone. The Lord our God shall be our fortress, even amidst this storm. And thus, with the faithful Abiathar by his side, David gathered strength from the depths of despair, knowing that in this great trial, the hand of God was at work, weaving his divine purpose through calamity. As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, David reminded his men of the promises of old, for the Lord has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. The plans of the Lord are for our good, even as shadows darken our path. In the gathering tumult, another revelation dawned within David's heart, whispering of hope yet unseen. The lineage of the waiters of God's table has been broken, yet from their ashes shall rise another, destined to restore. What secrets lay hidden in the shadow of calamity? The faithful awaited, their eyes searching for the light of revelation, longing to glimpse the unmanifested sovereign plan of God. And it came to pass that as David and his men continued their flight through the wilderness, they were met with unexpected allies in their tribulation, for the hearts of the people dwelled in the shadow of fear much like David himself. News of Saul's wrath had spread far and wide, igniting a fervor among those who sought deliverance from the yoke of oppression, and the disheartened bore witness to David's plight that I am the camp of David. The faithful murmured amongst themselves, If the Lord is with David, shall we not stand by him as he navigates these darkened paths? Thus, a tide of volunteers stepped forth, men weary from their own burdens, yet inspired by David's resolve. They then flocked to David, pledging themselves to his cause, binding their fates to the Anointed One. Meanwhile, in the chambers of Gibeah, Saul's heart grew increasingly turbulent. His madness deepened as jealousy consumed him, consuming all reason with vile thoughts. I shall eliminate all those who stand with David, he roared, seeking to cleanse his realm of any threat to his throne. Fear had seized his heart, and it was thus he sought to hunt his own people, casting aside righteousness for the swift blade of vengeance. Yet amid this turmoil, David continued to seek the counsel of the Lord. O God of Israel, you know the heart of man and the depths of our struggles. Guide my steps in this wilderness, for I am but a shepherd longing to lead your chosen people. Even in peril, his spirit soared, anchored by the remembrance of the oil poured upon him in Bethlehem, marking him as king in waiting. One evening, as dusk fell over the hills, Abiathar, the high priestess' son, approached David with a heavy heart. The priests of Nob, who sheltered us, have been slain. Saul's rage knows no bounds. How then can we remain a step ahead? He implored. David's heart ached for the loss of life due to his own missteps, but resolution surged within him. The blood of the innocents weighs on my soul, yet the Lord's covenant remains steadfast. We cannot linger in despair, action must become our faith. We must gather strength from our pain and ensure their deaths will not have been in vain. And so, they formed a stronger bond amongst David's band. "Let us not be merely face to face with the shadows," David urged them, "but let us be courageous as we strive to fulfill that which is appointed to us." The days turned into weeks of an unrelenting chase through valleys and hills, but crucially, the hand of God shielded his anointed. David learned of Saul's intended moves and evaded his pursuer at every turn. Day by day, the alliance grew stronger, their faith in the promise that God had destined David to lead them kindling hope in the hearts of many as whispers of revolt spread through the land. As the nights grew dark and quiet, David sought to draw closer to the Almighty, often retreating to a secluded hillside, where he poured out his soul, writing lines of lament and praise. "You are my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust," he penned, feelings of fear battling against the hope bestowed by the divine. Then came a chilling night, when a vision stirred within David's soul a prophetic whisper of impending danger. "Send forth your men into the territory of Maon, for Saul has drawn very near," it prompted. David swiftly called a council among his warriors, armoring their hearts with faith. "We shall face whatever comes. Gather provisions and sharpen our swords. Though we may be outnumbered, we hold the favor of the Lord. This I know." With the resolve ignited in their spirits, they marched towards Maon, but little did they know the true fulcrum of fate was yet revealed. Saul's relentless ambition drew ever closer to the Anointed, as he mobilized a greater army, the trap tightening, the tension palpable. Meanwhile, as David's group prepared for confrontation, there emerged uncertainty within the hearts of many. Just as the weight became unbearable, God intervened through an unforeseen twist. The Philistines surged against Saul's territory, drawing his focus away from the hunt for David. "God has turned the tide," Abiathar proclaimed, eyes ablaze with wonder. "Not in our strength, but by his hand alone." David looked up, marveling at the sovereignty of God. "Surely, the Almighty weaves our paths through unseen means, for each step we take only reveals more of his ultimate plan." And in this divine interruption, David felt renewed ambition. "Let us prepare. The time draws near for this land to witness the hand of providence, as the tapestry of our fates interweaves in ways we cannot yet comprehend." For it was then that David learned one of life's most profound truths: we are not alone in our battles, the Lord fights for us in ways unseen. As the dust settled in the wake of Saul's divination and the Philistine assault, the threads of God's fabric began to unfold, heralding the arrival of God's purpose. What awaited David was no mere escape, but a symphony of destiny, where shadow met light and purpose stood poised to take shape, and thus, the promise echoed as a gentle resonance in David's heart. But what awaited David was merely the unfurling of God's sovereign plan, orchestrating salvation not only for a nation, but for a world yet to come.